Today, we're jumping into a training plan straight from some of the greatest minds in history. We're going to completely tear down this myth of the born genius and give you the actual tools to build a smarter, more flexible mind. All right, let's get into it. So, what if I told you that you have the power to change your intelligence? Not just when you're a kid, but right now, today. For so long, we've all been told it's just in your genes. You're kind of stuck with what you've got. But you know what? The smartest people in history? They tell a very, very different story. I mean, take Albert Einstein. His teachers literally thought he wasn't very bright. And get this, it wasn't just him. This was part of a pattern that absolutely shatters our whole idea of the child prodigy. Charles Darwin, totally average student who couldn't stand just memorizing stuff. And Thomas Edison, his school actually kicked him out, saying he was unteachable. So wait a minute. If these people who completely reshaped our world didn't start out with some amazing genetic gift, what was their secret? It wasn't their DNA. And it for sure wasn't their fancy schools. It all came down to their daily habits. That's it. They systematically trained their brains to work differently, to think in ways that built intelligence over time. And you know the best part? These are habits that you can learn. So think of this as your personal training plan. We're going to walk through the 5 key habits that can turn an average mind into a truly exceptional one. This is basically your syllabus for building a genius-level operating system for your own brain. First up, we have got to talk about the biggest myth there is, the great IQ lie. This whole section is about rethinking the very foundation of how you believe your brain gets smarter. Okay, so what do most of us do when we want to get smarter? We consume more, right? More books, more podcasts, more articles. But the genius habit is the complete opposite. It's about thinking without any new input. It's about giving your brain the space to actually connect the dots on its own. And this isn't just some vague idea. There's real brain science here. When you stop taking in information and just think, you activate this incredible system in your brain called the default mode network. This is where your big ideas come from. It's where creativity and deep understanding are actually forged. Einstein was famous for this with his thought experiments. He would just walk and imagine. So here's your first training exercise, the daily thinking walk. It sounds simple, but trust me, it's not easy. No phone, no music, just you and your thoughts. And at first, yeah, it's going to feel boring, maybe even a little uncomfortable. But that discomfort, that's the feeling of your brain getting stronger. Okay, so you're making space to think, awesome. But what happens when you hit a wall and your brain is just screaming for a distraction? Well, our next habit is all about turning that feeling into a weapon. It's about training your boredom and realizing that the struggle, that's the whole point. You know that feeling, right? Your first instinct, and mine too, is to immediately go look for the answer. We rush to Google or we ask someone for help. But the most intelligent people, they intentionally delay that impulse. They embrace what psychologists call productive struggle. Check out this move from Benjamin Franklin. He would read an essay, then hide it, and then force his brain to try and rewrite it from memory. The key part? He would only look at the original after he had totally wrestled with the ideas himself. He knew that the struggle was the real learning. The answer was just the confirmation at the end. So here's the big mindset shift you need to make. That feeling of struggle isn't proof that you're not smart enough. It is the very mechanism that is making you smarter. It's forging deeper and stronger pathways in your brain. So we know that struggle is what builds intelligence. But how do you make that struggle productive instead of just, well, frustrating? The next habit is about giving that internal struggle an external form. It's about learning to embrace the struggle by making it something you can actually see and touch. You know, when most of us write something down, it's to record what we already know. But geniuses like Leonardo da Vinci, they used writing as a tool for that productive struggle. They didn't write to create a perfect record. They wrote to wrestle with their own confusion. Their notebooks were messy, full of questions and diagrams, like a physical battleground for their thoughts. And this isn't just an old school idea. We've got the receipts. Modern research from places like Princeton and UCLA shows that the slow, deliberate act of writing by hand forces your brain to engage on a much deeper level. It's harder than typing, and that difficulty, that struggle, is precisely what improves your real understanding in a way the easy efficiency of a keyboard just can't. All right, here's your next training exercise, the daily thinking journal. But hey, this is not a diary. You're not just logging what you did today. You're creating a space to struggle with what you're learning. Force yourself to answer 2 questions. What do I actually understand about this topic? And even more importantly, what still confuses me? Okay, we just saw how using your hands, by writing, is this powerful way to clarify a single idea. The fourth habit takes this to a whole new level. It's about using that same principle to build connections between ideas, to create what the brilliant investor Charlie Munger called a latticework of mental models. See, here's what separates the truly brilliant from just, being smart. They don't just know a lot about one thing. They understand the core ideas from many different fields. They see how cause and effect from physics can apply to a business problem, or how adaptation from biology explains a social trend. They're constantly connecting dots nobody else even sees. This ability has a name. It's called transfer intelligence, and it's basically a superpower. It lets you take a concept you learned in one area and apply it creatively to solve a totally different problem somewhere else. This, right here, is the real mark of a flexible and powerful mind. All right, last one. Let's talk about the fifth habit. And this one might be the toughest one to swallow in today's world. It's all about protecting your energy. This is a direct challenge to the whole hustle culture myth, because your brain's biggest upgrades, they happen during recovery, not exhaustion. You are not going to believe this, but Charles Darwin, one of the most productive scientists in history, only did about 4 to 5 hours of deep, focused work a day. The rest of his time, it was spent on long walks, resting, and just reflecting. He knew that working nonstop doesn't just lead to burnout, it actually hurts your ability to think clearly. So look, these aren't just 5 random hacks. This is a system. The most important thing to get is that intelligence isn't something you go out and chase. It's something you build day by day. It's built by challenging your brain, not just stuffing it with information, and by giving it time to recover, not pushing it until it breaks. So your training starts the second this is over. Look back at the system we just laid out and just ask yourself one simple question. What is the very first habit you are going to start building?